Everyone in CPP. This is like the beginning of your week, and I know you're super excited to dive into this. So I'm going to give you all the juicy bits as fast as I can because I have a lot to give you today. All right. Now, a niche is a stepping stone. I want you to listen carefully because this is if you're going to build a skyscraper, you need to dig a foundation, and a niche is exactly like that. You cannot build a tall skyscraper without a very deep foundation, and a niche is exactly like that for you as a content creator. So, let's dive into today's content. All right, so the biggest question people ask me is how to pronounce it, niche. Is it niche, niche? Like everyone gets super confused around this. I don't know why. It doesn't really matter. Either way, what you want to be able to do is create one. The second biggest question I get is it's 2023. Do I still need a niche? Yes, you do need a niche. Because if you want to become known, I'm like really asking you this, do you want to become known? Because pitches are clear with niches, right? If you want to pitch to somebody, the clarity of your pitch comes with a strong niche, right? Do you want to become rich? Riches are in the niches. You've heard that one before. And do you want to build trust with your audience, with people who are going to buy from you potentially this year? Bridges between us as connections, bridges are made with niches, okay? Yes, you not only need to niche, you need to become the niche. Okay. This is a complex concept if you don't know this one. So we'll get to it. What we'll cover today is the concept of niching, why you need to niche. I'm going to give you some exercises along the way as I explain all of this to you. And I'm also going to show you what a niche of one actually is and some examples. And I'll give you some tips on how to continue niching as well. You can always ask me in the chat anything that you need. Okay. If you don't know me, I did a little bit of an intro that day, but went went weird with my audio. My name is Sana. I'm a creator and consultant. I specialize in personal brand strategy with first-time entrepreneurs and long-time entrepreneurs, actually. And I help first-time entrepreneurs with my coaching program called The Outcome of One. And I have been a prior student in CPP. I'm now a mentor. And a lot of you might know me as the half face, semi faceless girl online. I'm quite a book nerd. I have a huge library. And I've learned about 95% of what I know through my own interest in digging in and reading and also experimenting. So I call myself an autodidact as well as you. A lot of you here are autodidacts. All right. I'm the person who's going to tell you to try to find your niche online, especially on Twitter. But I know that this is sort of like that bro advice that is very generic and really tough. It's literally something that some people fight back with me vehemently on Twitter sometimes. But you need to do this. And I know it's not that easy, right? It's not that simple, bro. People tell me this all the time. Okay. But I have a really simple way on how to help you. Okay. I want to like unveil what this is. Okay. And the best way I can do this is to kind of help you understand where you're at along the niching journey, right? You have a niche, you love it, great, wonderful. You may not need this, or you may need this as a refresher. I think it might be inspiring to some of you who do have a niche. If you do have a niche, but you don't know how to differentiate, it's like not specific enough. I think you'll gain a lot out of this lesson today. I don't know how I should pick a niche. This one is going to be for you. And if you have no idea what your niche even really is at the end of the day, this will also help you. I think some of the exercises will allow you to start to stimulate your mind on what your niche could possibly be. So, what we will cover today by helping people is I don't know how to pick a niche, and I have no idea what my niche really even is, right? All right, so before I help you with that, I need to kind of give you some context. What's in a niche, as Shakespeare says? He actually said, what's in a name, right? But what's in a niche? So I think the best way and the most simplest way I can help you understand this is in two ways: niche as a category and niche as a market. Okay, niche as a category and niche as a market. There's a lot of ways more. It gets more complex. I want to keep it simple. These are the two simple ways you can remember what a niche really is. Okay, most people know it as a topic. Other ones don't necessarily know it as a market. So, simplest way to think about picking a niche is to pick one subcategory within a broad category. Very simple. That's all it really is at the end of the day. And the idea is that, if a subcategory becomes too saturated, you niche down even further to a subcategory. Now, what do I mean by saturated? There's a lot of people who are offering solutions to a problem within a given category, right? And if there's a lot of people doing that and the audience in it is large and they're in charge and they like it and they want to know more, they may start to feel like this isn't enough, and they've seen it all, done it all, and then you create a new category altogether in that way. Sometimes you create an absolutely brand new category. Still kind of the same thing, but the idea of and the way that people think about it is a new category. This is because people are interested. They get more sophisticated. There are more key players talking about that said category, and you need to find an original outlook to attract the audience that you want. Okay. So what my company helps entrepreneurs with is to figure out what that subcategory is, and also what that new category possibly even is as well. Okay. But there's something that you need to understand. The category is only as big as the audience is interested in it. I'll give you an example. Okay. So let's start with one of the biggest, broadest categories ever, something that tons of people are interested in, and it is marketing, right? When I first started out my career, I said that my niche was marketing, but that is not a niche. It is not, my dear friend, especially for somebody like me who was trying to become a marketer. There are many men and women who are talented marketers, much better at their jobs in some respect than I am, for sure. That's a big mistake entrepreneurs make in the beginning. So I realized I needed to dig deeper and differentiate and be relevant to provide value for my specific audience and to attract the clientele that I wanted. Because if I say marketing, everybody and their grandmothers is going to say something about marketing. Everybody's a marketing expert to some degree, okay? Like the 13-year-old on Twitter who has, 50,000 followers, or the real retired grandma knows tons about marketing, tons of stuff that I won't even know, very, very old principles, right? And just anybody is interested in it. And it's not good enough if I'm trying to become a service provider. If I have a skill and I want to serve people and make money, okay, I'm going to get lost in the crowd, which a lot of people tend to do, okay? The easiest way to think about niching even further, right, is a very simple way of thinking about it through vertical industries and horizontal markets. Now, what do I mean by this? If you're a small business owner or a freelancer and you're targeting a intersection of vertical industry and a horizontal market, that helps you to make money quicker. Okay, this is because you have a skill or you're trying to learn a skill very, very quickly so that you can turn that into cash within 3 to 6 months, right? Like you get your first client within 3 months if you are learning a skill, versus if you already have that skill, who are you going to market it to, right? So I needed to pick a subcategory like many of you, right? There's a lot of things you can be an expert in marketing. It is a huge, broad category. I mean, there's inbound marketing, social media marketing, email marketing, content marketing, product marketing, automation marketing. I mean, like the list goes on. I'm out of breath. But that's not enough, right? That just tells you, okay, this person knows Google Ads marketing, right? Or Google Ads or funnel marketing or email marketing. Great. How can they help me, right? Because there's different markets involved. There's different people involved. So another way to look at this is the horizontal markets, right? Who are the people who need that specific thing? When I did this, I was like, oh, content marketing. I can do content marketing. But who needs that? Okay, well, there are content creators, bloggers, graphic designers, videographers, podcasters, presentation slide deck presenters, right? Course creators and thought leaders, right? So I had decided earlier on that I was going to niche into thought leadership content marketing. That's kind of how I came up with that. Long story short, I moved on from it. I learned everything that I could, but something that you do, which I highly advise if you are trying to learn a skill, is to create a semantic tree. This is something that Elon Musk has said in Twitter at one point. He said, if you want to learn anything fairly quickly, right? Because a lot of people ask him, like, how do you pick up, this and that and this and that, like so many big subjects, and you manage to keep up with all of it. And he thinks about it through a semantic tree, that everything is essentially connected, and you just kind of have to find that broad thing that connects to other things, and you'll learn what all of these things are through the interest that you have. So think about that broad category that you are interested in. Is it fitness, fatherhood, finance? I mean, marketing? What the heck is that broad category? Now, what are the subcategories that are connected with it? Maybe if you think about it like an umbrella topic, what are the subcategories involved with it? Now, choose a subcategory within that. What are the subcategories within that, right? You start to get this web of really interesting topics that you could possibly cover, and you find a really interesting thread and loop through it. So let me give you an example of one of mine, right? So when I first started, right, I said marketing. So I was like, okay, well, I can learn digital marketing, but that's vast, like that you learn tons of different things with it. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to specialize in funnel marketing, right? So I did a little bit of that, build websites and funnels for a little bit. And then I realized what I actually wanted to do was to strategize with people's marketing. So I was like, okay, well, if I look up, right, if I niche up, I'm thinking about strategy, marketing strategy, right? And strategy can be like, war strategy, business strategy, but I want to do specifically marketing strategy. Now, marketing strategy is huge, phenomenally huge. I felt very not well to talk about marketing strategy at a young age, but what I did find interest in was brand strategy. Brand strategy. Brand is a subsect category within marketing. So I immediately said, okay, well, I can do brand strategy. Well, what am I going to do brand strategy like for or with? There's personal, business, product, brand strategy. So I realized after doing a few brands, like creating a few brands for startups and some businesses, that I really like talking to people. That was the main thing that I wanted to do. And this was a hot and upcoming market. And I thought, okay, let me niche again into personal brand strategy. So this became my niche, and it still kind of is to this day. Okay. So I'm going to share an exercise with you so you can get started with this. Start a mind map by placing or playing with a semantic tree. Which broad category do you see the most potential in for yourself, right? You can't pick every category. You have to be specific. You have to kind of find the ways in which this thing connects to the thing that you have the most potential in. Which one has the most people interested in it? Which one is it gonna allow you to learn the most? Which one is most connected to your interests? Okay, you can create this in any which way. I highly suggest you get really creative with it, connect a lot of things, and post it in the channel. And if you need to, ask for some help from your peers and myself. Okay, now this is the first exercise, right? Like, you also have to figure out who is interested in this category. That's a huge proponent into what is going to help you pick the right niche for yourself. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you'll niche too much, and nobody's super interested in this subcategory, right? Like, there's not a lot of people, and you'll just hear crickets. And the whole time you're going to create content, and you're like, are you not entertained, right? What is going on? Why is no one answering? Why is no one interested? It's because you're too jargony, niche down. No one is making sense of it. And there's not a lot of people interested in it. And you want to reach a lot of people on Twitter. That is the whole goal of CPP. You want the widest amount of audience that you can have talking about said thing. But you also have to be aware of who you attract, right? There is just, not all traffic is good traffic. We can say that. But at the same time, you do want to attract a lot of people. But what you want to do is you want to be specific. Be specific about who you attract. When I first started doing thought leadership content marketing, I did something kind of tough. I didn't realize this. It's something that I realized a lot later, is that you attract lots of different people if you're not specific. So I said I wanted to attract thought leaders, right? I wanted to do thought leadership content marketing for thought leaders. Not a good idea, because what I ended up attracting was thought leadership coaches and people interested in thought leadership. And I didn't realize that I wasn't targeted enough with my approach about who I was helping. This helped me later to understand who is the type of people interested in thought leadership, right? Besides my competitors stealing, my content. What is that? And they were authors, they were academics, they were coaches. These were the types of people interested in thought leadership. They didn't consider themselves thought leaders. And even if they did, if they considered themselves thought leaders, they didn't necessarily want to work with me. Little old me, right? So the best way I could help them was by specifying, okay, well, I can help academics. I definitely can help academics. And I can help them understand thought leadership and make it easier for them. And I really started to understand them on a level that, made them get attracted to me, right? Now, when you think about this, there is a lot of, you can get even more specific, like, what kind of authors, what kind of academics, what kind of coaches. Something that someone has done recently when they're trying to target a market is experts becoming authors. And very simply, Joshua Lysick, who is a ghostwriter, capitalized on this market specifically. He's built up a lot of credibility in who he is and his skill as a ghostwriter, as someone who can write books and actually advise authors on what they can do to expand their authority with their book. So he works specifically with experts who are becoming authors, right? That is a very specific market that he is trying to dominate right now. Now, there's other people who do this as well. So one thing you will have to understand with your audience is something that you will have to like them, and they will also have to like you. It is a back and forth thing, like you are a rock star, so to say. And if you are a very boring TED Talk speaker, you'll often sound like this, blah, 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 and everyone gets tired at the end of the day. This is sort of like you too. I mean, you can also think about other people in this niche. If it sounds like blah, 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 blah all day long from everybody and you are tired, that is a very good example of you needing to niche down even further to figure out maybe a potential market that you're not so well aware of right now. So let me give you another exercise, okay? So write all the markets interested in your chosen category. Why are they interested? Okay, why are they interested in that category? And which ones do you want to serve? Which ones do you see the most potential in? Maybe you might have some affinity to it. Maybe you don't. And if you don't know your market yet, like you don't have a good hold or grasp around who they could possibly be, you should start with yourself. Start with yourself. Now, this is not a long-term strategy. It is a starting strategy, a beginner strategy. What I'd like you to do is to ask yourself, why are you interested in this chosen category? What do you want from this category specifically? Okay. And which ones do you want to serve as somebody who needs that serving right now? Think about it like that. That's a really interesting self-reflective exercise. Because the thing here is that different audiences have different problems. Now let's kind of break this down a little bit. Now, if everybody is coming over to you and saying, our product is the top of the line, this brand isn't as good as ours, we're better than anything you've ever tried before, and I know more than the other guy, right? The customer, even you think about it, like if anybody approached you like this, you'd be like, okay, bruh, what? Bruh, what? You'd give them the side eye and be like, okay, thanks, bye, care, bye. And what you want at the end of the day is to not be better. You don't want to necessarily, yes, you want to be the best, but being better isn't a good example of differentiating and trying to solve problems. And that's a very quick way to go about it. Being the best is a good way to go about it, but it's also not the best strategy. What you want to do, right? You don't want to become better. You don't want to become, well, maybe you want to become best, but you want to be different. And the way you can be different is you need to differentiate. What do I mean by differentiating? Really simply, it is all about capitalizing on a hill, right? Let me give you an example of this. So when you pick a niche, you are now positioning yourself and claiming a hill that you will possibly live and die on. Now, I'm making this very, dire, but I'd like you to think as a commitment long person, a long-term game person. What hill could you live and die on? Not for your own sake, my dear friend, but to contribute to the people who come to that hill, because you will have to serve that hill. The more you serve that hill, the better you serve that hill. You figure out the best way to serve that hill or the people who come to that hill. That means more and more and more opportunities, money, and authority for you. If you no longer want to serve that hill and the people who come to it, what happens then? You will have to find a hill that you can live and die on. Okay, that is essentially like claiming a niche for yourself. Sort of like, that game, I think it was flag football, where you claim territory by claiming this flag. So here is an exercise for you. Why don't you write all the problems down your niche markets are going through, okay? Which ones are dealing with what in that category that you've chosen? What are they going through and what is their biggest problem? Try to figure out what their biggest problem is. And you will double down on trying to figure out how to serve them. How can you serve them? How can you serve them best? Which one can you do the best for? Now, hear me out. You might be like, Sana, I don't know yet. Or maybe you have some really great ideas, but some of you may have no idea. And even if you do, you will have to get to know your audience more. What are their problems? How can you say their problems and their pain better than they can even describe it? That's when you're getting somewhere. And this requires you to do ongoing research and testing and experimenting and trying different things out and creating offers and putting it on the timeline, right? Like that's what you need to do in order to see what works and to claim that hill. That is the work of walking up the hill, right? Climbing the hill. Now, another really good way to do this, especially online, right, is to become a monster, as I say. And what I mean by becoming a monster is to disrupt the average way that we think, that your niche market thinks. So this is a very thought leadership way to think about it, right? Because if you think about it, you as a thought leader, you as a person who is going to lead others is through a strong line of reasoning in the way that you can think about something. And that is what attracts people to thought leaders, but it's also what attracts people to you and how you can gain authority very, very quickly. And the way you can do this is by contrasting what the average way is that we think and breaking that, right? So what status quo can you break? How can you become a monster, right? Monster essentially is if there's, life is going great and then a monster shows up. It's usually because that society or that community or those people or the characters in the film, they are in a status quo time period and they need that kind of disruption to think through things a little bit more. This is what AI is doing, right? It's a big, huge monster in our life right now. So what status quo does AI break? What status quo can you break? Okay. Funny enough, with niching, the status quo right now is hilarious. It's not so much that people need to understand niching. It's more so that people need to remember that that's the solution. And the status quo recently is anti-niching, which is hilarious to me. But that's the odd status quo that's been erupted, right, with poor education, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm breaking that status quo. What status quo are you going to break? So here's an exercise to think about this. Write, or what are the status quos around your chosen problems, right? I wrote that wrong. Write all the status quos around your chosen problem. And then what's your hot take on the matter, right? Which ones are interesting enough for you to write some hot take on? And usually it's something that you can get really passionate about, something that you can get like, there's a fire lit in your belly and you could probably go on a rant about this, and if you told somebody like, hey, I'm interested in marketing, oh, tell me a little bit more about that. And then you can say your hot take and then go off on a little bit of a tangent. Somebody might find interest in that or think, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, right? This guy or gal knows what they're talking about. Do this before you just say one thing. Say it maybe 100 different ways until something clicks. Because oftentimes what we don't realize is the way that we say things is already there, and you should go with the one that feels the most passionate oftentimes. It becomes easier to talk about. It's also something that other people can identify and see that, what you're saying is probably right, So one thing that this is going to explain, I want to explain something, really specific concept with you on what niching is doing right here. So when you do niching, right, you are trying to become the first to talk about it. Because a lot of people start talking about the status quo, this problem, that problem. And you might be like, okay, well, is this differentiated enough? And I don't want to get into this too deep because there's not enough time to go into this, but really simply the first person to enter into a category, addressing a certain problem, creating a certain product that helps them with this solution, helps this market with the solution, they are called first movers, and they often own majority market share in that category that is created. They are the first to create, and oftentimes they hold majority over that category. So think about it like this, right? Twitter is the first in the category. It's not the first of social media, but it's the first in its own category, right? The 140 character tweet, now it's 280, now it's 3,000. Like, I mean, it's kind of growing, right? Like in terms of Twitter and what it's becoming, it constantly niches itself. It's its own category specifically. The second, right here, if you look at this other guy climbing up the mountain over here, he is a top spot contender. Okay. What I mean by that, and give you a good example, earlier this year, Substack created a feature called Substack Notes, and that was supposed to compete with Twitter. Actually, it was Mastodon that kind of was trying to compete with Twitter, but it's its own kind of thing, and I didn't really want to talk about Mastodon. Thought Substack created a little bit more of a specific product that was trying to battle it out with what Twitter sort of is, right? In terms of the feature. So, top spot contender, that's Substack Notes. Great. Now, who's in the third in the category, right? It's that guy right underneath there. They are contending for the second spot. Now, recently, what just happened? Threads from Instagram came out, right, from Meta, and they contend for the second spot. And now, if you're like the fourth person in a category, you don't want to be, because what you're doing is you're contending with third, you're trying to contend with second. It becomes a cold war in terms of a battle. I'd rather you start a new category altogether, because the goal here is to be the only. That is the point of niching. That is the point of picking a niche, the process of picking it right now so that you can become it. Because a lot of you are like, man, this is a lot of work. Oh, I'm tired. Should I even niche to niche or not to niche? That is the question. This is not the question. You must do it, because the reasons to niche are simply your creativity is going to expand the more you dive deeper into it. You stand out without any gimmicks, any tricks up your sleeves. You don't have to. Okay. You learn the fundamentals and you stick with the fundamentals. You define the flexibility of your content, right? You might be like, what should I write about? But when you niche down, it becomes very simple. I don't talk about content pillars oftentimes, because I find that when you niche down, your content pillars oftentimes just reveal what they are. You get to be flexible about what you create online and what needs to be there. You get more opportunities to grow through saturation, right? If you start a new category, you get more market share the longer you stay there, and the more you stay on with the research and in terms of the getting to know your audience and really leading that category. I mean, you could be a category leader. You scale to the size of the market cap, right? In terms of how many people are going to be interested in that. That could be forecasted. You don't know. That is something that is fascinating. And the caps on these things are constantly growing if there's more and more enthusiastic people interested in this. This is something that you kind of have to think about. You're more aligned and authentic. When you niche down, you're more committed, you're more focused. You can be really yourself at the end of the day, because there's a way in which you niche that nobody else can really do it. And you also become more memorable. The way you niche allows you to become more memorable, because this follows the psychological rule. It's also a copywriting rule of the rule of one. Okay, this is something that essentially, if anybody is going to remember anything, you do not want to give them a series of 5 things to remember or a series of 3 things to remember. You want to give them one thing to remember. If you're going to introduce yourself, what are they going to associate you with? The power of association is pretty much the law of branding. You want to associate with something. Okay. This also helps to position you before you do the work, and it helps you stay focused. This is a big positioning tactic and a productivity tactic, or strategy, I should say. So let's tie this all together. I want you to write this down if you've been doing these exercises and pausing in the middle. I help specific market to overcome their biggest problem with my best hot take with tips on the specific category. Now, this could potentially be your bio if you write this and write it out really well, okay? What I'd like you to do is also post this in the channel, get some feedback on what your niche is. Is it something that makes sense to others? Is it something that's too niche, or it needs to be a little bit more focused and specific and differentiated? Ask others to get some help. Because here's the thing, the way you're going to talk about this is going to be personal. It's going to matter. The process in which you take to niche is going to be personal. The path to passion is personal, as I say, because niching, and the way that I look at it, is slightly, spiritual in a way. It's reflecting inside, is reflecting on yourself and what you want to create next in this given category. How do you want to make it more unique, right? How do you want to dig deeper? The goal here for me is to help you become the outcome. What do I mean by this? This is really specific in how others really show up online. I'm going to show this to how this works. It's essentially creating a niche of one. Remember, I told you I was going to explain what this is. So it's a niche of one is specifically a combination of your skills, talents, interests, passions, philosophy, and personality. And it's when you elevate the category itself and tie it to you, right? In association, you become forever embedded in people's minds as the creator of XYZ. You become the outcome people unconsciously want to become. Think about, your Steve Jobs or Elon Musk's, or let's say your, you save your son like Harrison, or Dino from The Art of Purpose, or maybe it's like Justin Welsh or even Dan Coe, right? They are embodiments of people and outcomes people want to become. So here are some examples. This is someone niched in their personal mission. This is Harrison from Save Your Sons. I love this profile. It is so specific. It's niched on a mission. And you can tell very quickly that, in terms of fatherhood, it's focused on lessons that they would describe for their sons. Now, fatherhood doesn't end at, sons. There's also daughters, right? Fatherhood can mean a lot of different things. It can mean fatherhood for the community. It can mean fatherhood for your church. I mean, I don't know. But this is one that he specifically created, and it's created an enormous amount of people interested in also creating accounts on fatherhood. He has been an inspirer of many different fatherhood accounts. And you can tell by his content too, 20 life lessons father must teach his son. That's his pinned tweet. And something on the right here, right? It's a meme on, this is not a flex, but this is as, if you are going to grow up as a young man, this is not something that you look up to. This is something that you look up to, right? That is a phenomenal way of lessons, right? That you want to leave your son and to, become the leader that your family needs and deserves. Now, here is someone niched in their personal interests. What I like about AOP's account is that, he's just sort of like, this is what I do. There's really no explanation as to I don't know, there's just something, there's a vibe, right? Like you get it with The Art of Purpose. He's got a vibe, and he says, I'm the millionaire educator because this is who I am. And and this is what I'm doing. I'm turning Twitter into my personal art gallery. If you know Dino and the AOP from his journey from 2020, he posted a lot of paintings and a lot of tips on, how he became a millionaire and what he was doing with Twitter. And that all of a sudden became Masterclass and Create 24/7 and then CPP, right? Like this is all stuff that he's created through niching in his personal interests. So he shares in his thread here, like how he became a millionaire and how, you could become one by the age of 30. This is exactly what you would need to do, right? Versus some of the stuff that he's been putting online recently is kind of phenomenal with the memes. He's no longer personal art, so to say, like, or personal art gallery. It's like he's creating art in of itself in terms of how you think, right? In terms of what he's gotten from that, the paintings. This is something he's very specific on his personal philosophy and what he's pushing out there. And it's kind of its own thing now. It's almost created like a life of its own in terms of like trad, Western trad, and, culture critic is another one. So like there's this whole group of, anonymous accounts kind of, leading the way in terms of this niche, so to say. This is very specific in terms of how he personally niched himself in terms of a case study. This is another one who niched themselves in terms of personal expertise. Former political strategist, brand narrative strategist. That's a new one that he recently put. But he is specifically into political strategy. He will write about it. He will explain certain concepts. He will, tell you how to think like a political strategist. And he also is starting to talk a little bit more about brand as well, and image consulting and stuff like that. Some of the content that he writes is really it's the stuff that kind of gets under your skin. It's very, emotional in that way. And he's always sharing his line of thinking, and which brings tons of people who are interested in his expertise and getting his coaching or consulting. Okay. This is an example of Wes Cauchi is doing a personal startup, right? If you know Wes Cauchi is a co-founder of Maven HQ, which is a course creation platform. And she, it's not very specific about what she writes about. I mean, it's kind of leadership, entrepreneurship, and marketing. Okay, sure. But I think those things sort of, embody what she's always around, right? She's always around doing leadership stuff, entrepreneurship stuff, and marketing stuff, right? That's probably top of mind for her as a co-founder of Maven HQ. So she has her pin tweet of like her best threads of 2021. And then she has this like specific style of content, like most people suck at so-and-so, right? And here's a guide on what to do, right? This is if you look at her top threads or her top tweets, this is sort of the format she uses. Most people suck at, and then she writes about anything and everything literally related around leadership, entrepreneurship, or marketing. Okay. So she's her brand, she uses her brand and her traffic to get people understanding what the product or what the company of Maven HQ is. That's how she's niched herself, if that makes sense. Here's an example of someone niching for their personal newsletter. I love Caitlin and how she does this. She calls herself the customer whisperer, or maybe somebody called her that. And she says, I reveal the hidden reasons why people buy. And 51,000 some people, smart marketers, she calls them, read my newsletter on buyer psychology. I'm a smart marketer, aren't I? Why am I not subscribed? That is something that if somebody's going to land on her profile, they're going to instantly think that. And the way that her content is, it really adds to that flavor. 12 pricing psychology tips to help you sell more stuff. Okay? Really fantastic. There's some other stuff here too. It's kind of, it sucks when you get a new product, right? Like she's getting really digging into more psychology stuff, more stuff around, why customers buy and essentially anything related around that buyer psychology. I love this profile. It's a really great example of, niching to something that you want to drive traffic towards. You can also do this towards a product. You can do this towards a specific offer that you have, right? Newsletter is just an example of that. All right. So I've given you a lot of examples on what a niche of one is. If you want some more help, right, if you're trying to think about, okay, well, I don't really necessarily know what my niche even really is, I highly suggest you type in niche of one in Google. What will happen is you will see my article up at the top right, Sana A. Ahmed, How to Create a Niche of One. This is literally the article, Build Something So Good and So Specific It Stands Alone. It's a very long article that I wrote in 2021 that people still read a ton about. And it'll give you a lot of really great tips on how to niche down even further. If you want any more resources besides the article, obviously you can go to, this is literally the article link. But I also have a couple of other resources like a course and a coaching program that you can ask me about. These are some nice things that people have said earlier this year. It's a little bit older. But these are some things that some people in CPP or other big creators have said around, anything around niche of one or my thoughts on niching. And you can ask me literally any questions that you'd like in the channel. Please do the assignments that I've given you in terms of what to post in the channel. I'd love to see your mind maps and your bios potentially. And I will see you on the flip side. Keep crushing it, guys. Like, this is literally the foundation. This is going to be so exciting on what you're going to build. And if you have a really great niche, I guarantee you will attract tons of people very, very quickly to it. You could possibly be one of those people who reaches 10,000 this month. All right. Have a good one, guys. Take care.